Good morning. Welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Wednesday, the 19th of January. When I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, sometimes it's easier than others. I found this little piece of paper. I have these little pieces of paper everywhere, and they're not stickies, so they get lost easily. They just piece of paper from a pad that I have. And this is something that I heard from speaker Brene Brown, who is a psychologist and a researcher, and I think she's out of Texas. And she's very, very popular, does a lot of really good work for leadership. But she does the whole thing about just showing up. This idea that you just show up, even when you don't know what is going to happen, just show up. There are lots of days, I imagine we all have them, when, you just, you don't know, you don't really necessarily have a plan, or if you do have a plan and a schedule and a whole bunch of tasks to do, you don't have the heart to do them, and you just want to stay home. You ever have that day you just want to curl back up and go back to bed, or stay in your pajamas all day? You're not feeling sick or anything, you're just feeling kind of, you don't have a lot to give. Well, sometimes it's the act of just showing up that digs deep for that something to give. I've had plenty of things like that in my life, to the point now that my husband kids me that when I'm really dreading going to something, that's usually the moment when I'm really going to enjoy it. I'm not a party person. I'm an introvert. I like my quiet time. And so, come Christmas time, especially with his work, my work doesn't really have a lot of parties, and especially during COVID. But pre-COVID, when Rob was with different units, or he was the Padre particularly when he was a Padre at Borden, he had many different units he worked with, and they also had like Christmas parties and things like that. And many of them were parties that the spouses were invited to go to, and I didn't know anybody. And Rob knew them to work with, but they didn't, they weren't, playing hockey. Well, he was playing hockey with some of them, and those people I knew. But lots of them, he was there because he was their chaplain, and didn't know them all that well. But he was expected to go, and then of course his wife was expected to go. And I used to just dread it, getting dressed up and putting on makeup and all that stuff, all things I really don't like doing. And then get there and, mingling with people you don't know, who have things in common with each other, but not with you, because you're a priest and they're all like engineers or something. And, really thinking this is not going to be good. How I'd ask him, like, okay, what time is, we have to get there for 6, and then supper is at 7, and there's a bit of, there's presentations and speeches. It's at 8 o'clock, and then there's dancing. So we'd be out there by 9. We never had kids to worry about to say, but we had a babysitter, so we didn't have a built-in excuse to leave. But I always worried about, when's our out going to be? When am I going to be able to say legitimately, well, we really, we can leave now. And 9 times out of 10, when I would do that work in my head and sort of planning my escape route, those would be the nights when Rob would be looking at me like, did you want to leave? Because I unexpectedly met someone that I had, didn't realize I knew. I met them at the base library, or at the Tim Hortons, or at the Canix. That's, for those of you who don't know, the Canix is the store, like can be a variety store or a grocery store or a little, department store, usually on a base that sells things that people would need, uniform, kit, things like that, but also groceries and towels and furniture and things like that. So it would amaze me that, there'd be somebody that I would say hi to quite often, or even sometimes have a conversation with, and not realize that they worked with my husband. And sometimes we had the greatest time, the laughter and the jokes, and people just being able to let loose, to not have to worry about being on parade or being watched by their boss, their sergeant, or their captain, or their lieutenant colonel or something. That they could just relax and be themselves, and really had a great time. Not always, but I did. And so in the back of my head now, when I think about, the whole, like, here we go again, I have to get ready and go out, I'm really dreading doing that. I often find that those are the times when I am surprised by joy. I'm surprised by fun. I am surprised by things I had not expected, just because I showed up. The same thing can be said when it's not even special occasions, but just the fact that you show up. how many times, for those of you who have been churchgoers, is it sort of, you get up on a Sunday morning and think, well, do I have to go to church? Well, I don't really have to go to church. I'm not doing anything. I'm not a sides person or a greeter, and I'm not in the choir, and no one's going to notice if I don't go. I've got news for you. If you don't show up, they notice. Your priest will notice. And we do take note. We are aware, because we want to see you there. Because church is part of what contributes to your spiritual growth, and your presence helps to contribute to others, including the priest's spiritual growth as well, and a sense of community. So yes, you are missed when you don't show up. However, that moment when you think, do I want to go? You know what? No one's expecting you ever to be, like, unless you're paid for something. Like if you are the guest speaker at a conference or something, yeah, they expect you not to just show up, but show up prepared, if this is your job. But if you're just going to something, you're going to a party, you're going to the library, you're going shopping, you're going to meet some friends, if you've got nothing left in the gas tank of your soul to give, just show up. Just show up. Even when you don't know what is going to happen, even when you don't feel like you've got anything that you could possibly contribute, just show up. You will, if nothing else, be a presence to the other people who are there. And it will show them that you care. That you care enough about them to show up and be with them. That in itself, I cannot explain how wickedly important that is. Just showing up also allows you the opportunity to contribute to a conversation, to share some wisdom, to give some insights to things that maybe you hadn't thought of before, that you don't talk much about, but the conversation swings around to something you happen to know something about. And the fact that you showed up allows you the opportunity to share your wisdom, to give something to that other person or those other people that allows them to think, oh, okay, I hadn't thought about that before. Or yeah, that's a different way of thinking about that. I'll look at that. I'll approach that differently. And even if you don't have any wisdom to give, what about the wisdom that you receive? What about the gifts that you receive from others? The look on another person's face when you walk into the room and they say, hey, how are you? That's good for the soul. When someone smiles and says your name, that's good for your soul. When you're sitting and listening, and maybe the reason you didn't want to show up was because you're not feeling well, or you're kind of feeling overwhelmed by a conundrum or a problem at home or at work, the Holy Spirit has some pretty incredible ways of being coincidentally or serendipitously, more likely, being able to bring other things into your life when you least expect it. Maybe you're having some issues with your spouse or your children, and you're really struggling and you don't know what the answer is or how to respond to them. And you go into a situation, you don't even say anything, but over the time of conversation, somebody else says something, or brings up the conversation, or brings it out of you that you say something, and they're able to share with you some wisdom, some experience, some ideas, or even simply some compassion that opens your eyes to see a different thing, to see a different way, to hear a piece of advice, to hear something new, to hear the Holy Spirit saying to you, try this way. You are not alone. I am with you. They are with you. Try a different tact. Say these words. Do this thing. By just showing up, you open up the possibility for opportunity. Now, of course, there will be times when you just show up and nothing happens, except you showed up. That in itself is a gift to you and to the people with whom you're sharing this time. But, I probably 9 times out of 10, you're going to take something positive away from that if you allow yourself to. Showing up gives you the opportunity to learn. It gives you the opportunity to teach. It gives you the opportunity to share relationship with others. And that is so very important, especially for Christians, because everything we do is all about relationship. So how about thinking about just showing up, whether it's showing up to church, your job, for coffee, showing up at the library, whatever it might be. This week, take as many opportunities as you can to just show up. And you might be surprised how often Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God just show up with you and for you. Have a great day, and God bless.